As I have said, the whole point of G-biota beds is to grow food to feed our guts, and that means not using any toxic chemicals. In this video, I want to look at the techniques we can use to get by without toxic chemicals and grow gut food. The two big problems we face are weeds and pests. So, although there are plenty of weed seeds flying around in the wind, they do not actually germinate on the dry surface of a G-biota bed. It is very difficult to kill seeds. So if we want to reseed an area, I will sprinkle the area for a couple of weeks before I seed to get the weed seeds to germinate, which I can easily work the surface to kill the fresh seedlings, and then apply my seed sludge. Putting a piece of old carpet on the area to be seeded can be beneficial. The soil can be kept moist so the weed seeds germinate, but the lack of light will kill off most of the weeds. It is far from perfect, and I still have to hand weed, which I often do with a process I call water weeding. Basically going out with a high pressure hose and blasting the weeds, which enables me to pull the entire weed and root system out of the soil. Some seeds, like nutgrass and onionweed, are very persistent and difficult to kill. If you leave just a bit of root, it will regrow. Water weeding helps to remove the entire plant, and is not too bad a chore on a hot summer's day. Much better than digging. We may not like weeds, but they are highly effective plants which are very good at pulling nutrients out of the soil, so they are actually an asset. I often have compost bins spread around the bed so I can recycle them. I'm a bit of a recycle nutter, and I'm always looking for converts. This does not solve the weed problem, but at least it makes it manageable. Insects are a bigger problem. Keeping the surface dry certainly helps keep away the slugs and snails, which just invade if the surface is wet. But cabbage moths are on a different scale and will decimate any pure brassica crop. However, by having a mixture of plants, particularly if they include plants like buckwheat or marigold, which are just decoy plants, or resistant plants such as spinach, would allow the susceptible plants to gain some level of maturity. Plants have evolved a system of communicating with each other by an underground system like the internet, but actually mycorrhizal fungi. If one plant is attacked, it will send out signals through the underground internet, so they will generate the chemicals they use for defense. This is how plants with no natural defense systems have survived and flourished over the ages in the wild, and is one reason why I like having multiple varieties. Some plants, like buckwheat, are natural homes for predatory insects, which will prey on the pest insects. I once planted buckwheat as a food crop, but it did not suit me. I just left them there, and they grow and reseed quite happily with no work on my part. I'm not sure how effective they are, and they certainly haven't halted the swarms of grasshoppers we get, so need a more effective strategy. The real trick is to grow baby greens, the step just beyond microgreens. They are full of flavour and nutrients and make excellent smoothies, wraps, or just a good old veggie and peanut butter sandwich. They may be the most nutritious and tasty phase of plant growth, but they also pretty much solve the insect problem. I just let the plants grow and eat the fresh young tips as they emerge, a sort of beat 'em to it approach. I leave the older leaves in place, and the insects may feast on these, but the plants will typically keep on growing and will eventually seed for my next generation of plants. With an automatic system, we set the timer, or sunshades if using a solar system, to give a pulse of water for a few minutes several times a day. The excess water drains back through the leaky dam, so the bed is always moist, but never really saturated. What I call the Goldilocks moisture, not too wet and not too dry. This works really well, but I want a simple system that kids can manage themselves, which is why I developed the manual system for schools. With this manual system I'm suggesting for schools, we just make a small observation hole by hand so we don't damage the plastic, and we can see the water level right down to the base of the bed. We put a hose into the compost bin so the water goes through the compost bin and into the bed, and as soon as we see the water we just turn off the hose. We just wait until the base is dry and repeat the small top up. How long depends very much on the climate and what plants are growing, but this watering may be needed several times a week. This is different to a wicking bed where we may fill the entire base with water, which may be enough for a week or more. Having the soil saturated for a long period of time is not good for the biology we are trying to grow. But in a school environment, we face the problem that the beds may be left unattended over the weekends and a short holiday. We can solve this problem by giving a much bigger watering, so the lower reservoir has much more water. In essence, we are converting our G-biota bed into a short-term wicking bed. This obviously depends on where you are situated, so a little experiment is needed to see how long the water reservoir actually lasts. I can tell you that as a fact, in the dry tropics where I lived, the bed would dry out over the long summer holiday. Fortunately, baby greens grow within a few weeks, so that may be acceptable. Or alternatively, it is not too big a problem to fit an external reservoir with a float valve to make an automated system. The picture shows a typical reservoir and solar powered pump. To see all my videos and articles on how to build and operate G-biota beds, go to www.gbiota.com.